Elash, and I'm here at the Hub Culture Pavilion in Davos. Really delighted to be joined by Stuart Russell. Thank you very much for coming along.
You're very welcome.
Professor of Computer Science at UC Berkeley.
That's right.
And I want to talk to you about artificial intelligence. Tell me a little bit about what it is and why it's so important here this year.
So artificial intelligence, or AI for short, is a branch of computer science that's about making computers more intelligent. And to a layperson, that seems kind of obvious, that dumb is worse than intelligent, so why don't we make them more intelligent?
Mm-hmm. A lot of stories that you can read in the press say, our mechanical robot overlords are coming, computers are going to destroy our jobs. In fact, I had my first interview was with Lucien Tarnowski, and he said, actually, technology is destroying more jobs than it creates. So there are reasons to be afraid, aren't there?
So there are two separate stories that are getting twined together.
Mm-hmm.
One story is about jobs and the fact that both intelligent systems on the internet and real robots, physical robots, are becoming much more capable. And in many cases, we're going to see robots taking over
mm-hmm.
jobs that are usually done by
mm-hmm.
humans. And in the past, that's often meant some disruption and dislocation, and then the economy finds a new equilibrium where people have different jobs, often better paid and more pleasant jobs. And if you think about it, if someone was writing science fiction 500 years ago,
mm-hmm.
and they described a vision of hell in which most of humanity is in the role of a machine, just part of a giant factory where they're doing mechanical motion over and over again,
mm-hmm.
18,000 times a day for their entire life until they retire and die. That would be, that would be sort of, oh, that could never happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, humanity would never go into such a terrible situation, but we did.
Right.
And now everyone's worried that it's going away. So,
right.
But
right.
that going away might cause a lot of disruption, and I think economists have really got to figure out how can we move quickly and relatively painlessly to a new equilibrium where people are doing much more interesting things,
mm-hmm.
and yet there's still an economy, because the other problem is, who's going to pay you to be your friend or mm-hmm. read stories or do
mm-hmm.
things that people really like to do. So that's one story. The other story is that AI technology is really accelerating, and people within the field and outside the field are thinking about, well, what happens as it continues,
mm-hmm.
right? If it becomes as capable or more capable than human beings in lots of areas, what does that mean in terms of our relationship with the machines and mm-hmm. our ability to make sure that they do what we really want? So science fiction has always had this scenario like Terminator and The Matrix,
mm-hmm.
where we lose control, and for some reason the machines just become evil and,
mm-hmm.
and malevolent, and they try to destroy us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a completely implausible scenario. So most people within the field have kind of ignored that view. But there are plausible scenarios where if we don't do things the right way, there could be difficulties. Because if a machine is much more intelligent, i.e. it makes decisions much more accurately, it thinks over a much longer term, it takes much more information into
mm-hmm.
account, but its values are not exactly aligned with those of the human race, just because we made an accident and we didn't specify them right. Just like King Midas wanted to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't actually want his daughter to be a solid block of gold, and
right.
he didn't want to be unable to eat because anything he touched to his lips turned into gold.
Right.
Right. Well, but he misspecified his request.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that, right? If you misspecify your request to a machine that's much more intelligent than you are, then the consequences could be quite undesirable. And so there's a research question, and
mm-hmm.
I've been advocating that we actually spend a lot of time on this.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get machines' values to be aligned as perfectly as possible with those of the human race?
Mm-hmm.
And you might say, well, what on earth are the values of the human race? That's
right.
a very good question. We all have different values, our cultures differ,
mm-hmm.
but I think there is a lot of shared values.
Maybe we could use the new Sustainable Development Goals.
Among others, yes. But even, if you think about a domestic robot, perhaps
mm-hmm.
sometime, maybe 10, 15 years, we might have robots helping around the house,
mm-hmm.
cooking afternoon tea for the kids
mm-hmm.
when they get home from school, looking after the laundry and the
mm-hmm.
pets. The robot has to know that the cat, even though the cats can be cooked, that's not the right thing to make for dinner, even if the kids are hungry, right? You know,
Right.
and if the food's been in the fridge too long, then maybe you shouldn't give it to the kids for dinner. You know, even if you have to buy
Right.
some new food, probably better than risking tummy upset. So there's lots of daily decisions that we make that involve trade-offs, and to make those correctly and flexibly, the system has to share our values across anything that can come up. You know, and the same is true for self-driving cars and so on and so forth. So I think in the future we might see what we now think of as sort of moral philosophy. We might see that being a key industry sector. You know, just like Bloomberg and Reuters are you know, a big industry sector for financial information, there might be a sector for values information. So, and then manufacturers of robots will buy you know, value packages, and you can get a robot that's maybe more, you want a more artistic robot or a vegan robot in your household, and you can, you know, get the plugins for those things and so on. So I'm sort of joking a little bit, but I think this is a very unexamined area of research, because if you look at philosophy, if you look at statistics, economics, operations research, artificial intelligence, all these areas deal with what does it mean to make decisions well. But they all assume that the objective with respect to which you're making the decision is somehow exogenous, that someone else is going to tell you what the objective function is. But that's not how humans don't work that way, right? We're supposed to learn the objective as well as learn how the world works, right? And if I put the cat in the oven, you would say, oh, you fail, right? You didn't learn that cats are an important part of a family's values. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stuart, for stopping by the Hub Culture Pavilion here in Davos, and I'm Edie Lush.